Our next speaker is Lisa Ancliffe, who is an occupational therapist, and she's going to be talking about frailty and fatigue. Welcome, Lisa.
Can I ask a question? Who function besides the NKF?
Can we take the questions at the end, please?
Hello, I'm Lisa. I'm an occupational therapist at the Royal Free in London. Apologies for talking to you about frailty and fatigue at the end of a really long day. The irony there. But yeah, this is what I'm going to talk to, but I think in the interest of time, I'll just get straight into it. So we know that living with chronic kidney disease can be difficult. We can't cure kidney disease, but the aim of living well with kidney disease is to empower people and anyone involved in their care to minimise the burden and consequences of kidney-related symptoms and to enable them to live the fullest life possible. So from a healthcare perspective, and I'm obviously an occupational therapist, so the Royal College of Occupational Therapists brought out guidance in 2017 that I think sums up the idea nicely. So we're all aiming to live and not just exist. But more importantly, from a patient perspective, I took this quote from Maddie Warren that most of you will probably know. And she was talking during COVID about shielding, but I think the sentiment is transferable, that kind of what point is there to having life if you're not able to do the things that you want to be able to do and that are important to you. So why is it important to age well? We know the UK's population is ageing. So in 2022, there was around 12.7 million people aged 65 or over in the UK. So that was about 19% of the population. But according to the Office for National Statistics, by 2072, this could rise to 22.1 million people, so that would be about 27% of the population. And we also see this trend in kidney disease. So Kidney Research UK predict there will be more older people living with advanced CKD in the future, with an estimated 3.9 million people living with CKD stage 3 to 5 by 2032. So ageing well with kidney disease is a really important consideration, both for people living with advanced kidney disease, but also us as the services providing support to them. So having a look at frailty, some people may have seen this diagram before. So frailty is a decline in multiple body systems that results in lost reserves, leading to increased vulnerability to health changes from minor stresses, illnesses, or infection. So having a look at this, somebody who's fairly fit and well, if they become unwell, they might have a little bit of a dip in how they're managing their day-to-day activities, but they will usually recover and get back to their previous level of function. Whereas the more frail you are, you will probably take a bigger dip, take longer to recover, and there's always the risk that you might not get back to the previous level of function that you were at. So just to address the elephant in the room, because the term frailty can be really divisive. So the British Geriatric Society did some research into people's perspectives on the term, and unsurprisingly, people didn't identify with the term frail. So the word tended to evoke a really strong and often emotional reaction in older people, particularly older men, not making any comments there. But several research participants actually expressed offence at the term being used. So the objections to the word frail were linked to this fear of losing independence and dignity and control over one's life. And these strong negative associations came from people thinking that frailty was an irreversible condition that some people enter into in their final stages of life, and that it was assumed that there was nothing that could be done to improve it, and also that it wasn't on a spectrum, it was kind of a really severe end of the side of it. But people did, however, recognise the experience of living with frailty, so things getting a little bit harder, or taking a little bit longer to do the things that they normally did, or needing a little bit of support. So at the moment, I don't think we have a different word that we can use. If anybody has one, please let me know. I would love to rebrand it. But I think what we need to do as healthcare professionals is, if we are supporting somebody with frailty, we need to make sure that we're very clear with our explanation of what we're wanting to achieve. So we're aiming to support somebody to live as well as they can for as long as possible. We're looking to put in preventative strategies to stop somebody becoming more frail, or we might be trying to reduce somebody's frailty or just support them to live the best life that they can. I think it is important that we do set clear and realistic expectations, because there are certain things that are out of our hands that we can't control, but it's definitely not a one-way street, and there's definitely things that we can do to optimise people. So the British Geriatric Society then came up with something that they thought was a bit of a better explanation for frailty. So basically thinking about what you might experience if you did have some level of frailty. You might be feeling a little bit slower, you might feel like you've got some muscle loss or a little bit weaker, feeling a bit more tired more often, needing more help with getting things done, some unintentional weight loss, or just taking a bit longer to recover when you become unwell. Some people may have seen this before. This is the clinical frailty scale. It's sometimes called the Rockwood scale after the man who developed it, but it's the most used tool to screen for frailty. And as you can see, it is on a spectrum there. So from somebody who's very fit and well, all the way through to various levels of frailty up to people in the last stages of their life. So we know frailty is important to manage, we know how to screen for it, but what can we actually do about it? So again, this is advice from the British Geriatric Society, and a lot of this is your general kind of healthy living habits. So things like being active, exercising regularly, eating a balanced diet, stop smoking, reducing alcohol intake, and maintaining a healthy weight. But if we're looking at something a little bit more complex in supporting frailty, then this is the Comprehensive Geriatric Assessment, or the CGA. So this is the gold standard for the management of frailty. It's multi-professional, it's multi-domain, and it assesses medical, psychological, and functional states. So the first step of the process is that somebody has a really personalized, holistic assessment of their function, their psychological state, their physical abilities, their future wishes, what social supports they have, the environment that they're living. And then from this, a problem list, an individualized problem list for the person is developed, an intervention plan on how to manage some of those problems, and then it's reassessed. And it's important that this is an ongoing process, so it's not a have an assessment, tick a box, there you go. It's something that continues on to support people through their journey. So I just wanted to give some examples of working through the CGA process. This is biased towards a therapy perspective because I'm an OT, so that's what I always talk about. So this is just an example of some of the things that might come up on that problem list for somebody. And it's also important to acknowledge that it's not just the person themselves that we're looking at, but it's all the people around them as well. It's their support network, because we recognise that nobody exists in isolation. You know, they're a package deal with the people around them. And then from there, you develop a personalised care plan. And it's really important that this is done in collaboration with the person to identify what's really important to them, what's meaningful to them, and what do they want to focus on, because what we as healthcare professionals think is important could be completely different to the person themselves. And it's also important that we identify potential risks as well. So we don't want to wait until everything's a problem. We want to try and do some of that preventative work and be proactive rather than just reactive. And then again, just thinking from a therapy perspective, some of the interventions that we might put in place, things like rehabilitation program, trying to build somebody's strength back up. We might provide some adaptations or equipment to help make some of the daily tasks they need to do a bit easier. A bit of symptom management, and I'll have a talk about that in a little bit. And then lots and lots of onward referrals as well, so linking in with all the services around. I just wanted to give a bit of an example. So this is a renal frailty clinic that we set up at the Royal Free. So we got some pilot funding from NHS England for 2 years to look at innovating some of our renal pathways. And as part of that, we developed this frailty clinic, which is embedded in our Advanced Kidney Care Clinic, or AKC clinic. It's a joint run clinic, so by geriatricians, an OT and a physio, and people can either see both the geriatrician and the therapist, or just one or the other, depending on what their needs are. So having a look at who we're seeing, so the pie chart is looking at the clinical frailty score. So we are seeing a whole range of CFS scores. So we're people from managing fairly well all the way through to people already experiencing more severe forms of frailty. And looking at the most common concerns that people are reporting to us, fatigue is the most reported that we're seeing, followed by pain and poor sleep, but there's a whole range of things that people are talking to us about. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all the outcome measures, but we're collecting a lot of data to hopefully build a business case and show the importance of having a specialised clinic like this. Feedback has been positive so far, so people are strongly agreeing that they felt supported, they feel like they're getting something that they can't get from other clinics around there at the moment, feeling like they have the space to be listened to and somebody really listening to what's important to them. Okay, so that was my whirlwind tour of Frailty, and now just to talk about managing fatigue. So we know, again, that there's no cure for fatigue, but good management can help reduce its impact on someone's life and their well-being. So what is fatigue? Well, it's this feeling of extreme tiredness or exhaustion that's not improved by sleep or rest and not caused purely by exercise. Basically, it's disproportionate to the activity. So if I run a marathon and then I'm tired, it would never happen, but if I did, that would be a normal reaction to running a marathon, to be wiped out. If I get up in the morning, have a shower and get dressed and I'm wiped for the rest of the day, that's disproportionate to the level of activity that I've done. Fatigue can mean different things to different people. Everybody's experience of it is different and how it impacts them is unique. So again, it's really important that any management is really holistic and personalised to the person. Again, just thinking, why is fatigue important in kidney care? Studies repeatedly show fatigue as one of the most common symptoms experienced by people with kidney disease, with higher prevalence than the general population. So that prevalence ranges from 20 to 90% across all stages and treatment modalities, but we do see higher levels of fatigue linked with those more advanced kidney disease stages. It's consistently ranked high in a list of priorities for both patients and their caregivers. Some people may have heard of SONG, the Standardised Outcome Measures in Nephrology project that came out of Australia. So the SONG project got patient and carers and healthcare professionals to rank 36 outcomes, and fatigue was high up in the top 10 for overall importance. It was ranked third in importance by kidney patients and was in the top 7 for both those on and off a renal replacement therapy. It was ranked 4th for caregivers. This study was looking at the US, Australia, and the UK, and it was in the top 10 across all of those countries, and it was ranked 5th overall for the UK, so it is really important. I just wanted to also highlight that fatigue is not just physical. I think that's what most people think of when they think about fatigue, but it can also be cognitive, emotional, or social, and it can really have serious impacts on someone's life, including on how they manage their healthcare. So someone may just experience one form of fatigue or all of them, but basically if somebody, say, is experiencing cognitive fatigue, then it's no less valid than somebody who's experiencing physical fatigue. And the impacts of fatigue are widespread, so it can prevent us from doing the things in our life that we enjoy, and it can lead to some unhelpful behaviours as well, so withdrawing or avoiding tasks, people and situations. And it can have emotional impacts, such as making us feel frustrated or overwhelmed, low in mood, demotivated, or feeling like no one understands. And also mental impacts as well, so difficulty concentrating, having conversations, reading, or completing mental tasks. And it can also impact on actual treatments as well, so not being able to get to appointments, difficulty processing health information, or making decisions about treatment pathways. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an example. So fatigue can often be dismissed or misunderstood by people who haven't experienced it themselves. And something that seems quite simple to somebody actually is a lot more for somebody who's experiencing fatigue. So if we take something like making a cup of tea, which most people will probably consider quite a straightforward, simple task. Well, whenever we do any tasks, we have internal and external processes that are happening at the same time. So there's biomechanical processes, so our brain is sending signals through the nerves to our muscles to move our joints. There's the physiological side of things, so our body is constantly adjusting its internal systems in response to what's happening outside. So things like heart rate, oxygen levels, chemicals are being released in the blood. There's all the sensory information, so our brain is constantly getting strains of information coming in, and it's using that and interpreting that information to keep us safe. Things like identifying if you put your hand on a hot stove, knowing how much pressure to use if you're holding an egg versus you're, I don't know, lifting a cannonball as you do in life. I don't know where that example came from. Being able to see where we are in relation to space, keeping our balance, especially when we're moving outside our base of support. Then there's all the cognitive processes. So our brain is interpreting that information. It's using things like memory, perception, and decision-making centers to coordinate our movements and determine our actions. And we need to have this sequence of events to be able to complete a task based on our previous completion of those tasks. And then there's the emotional side of it as well. So if we're feeling emotional, that can impact on how we do activities. You know, we all know that if we're upset or anxious, it changes how we do things. You might be shaking, you might spill something, you might be getting more frustrated if you make a mistake. And then there's all the external factors as well. So the social context will change how you do an activity. You know, you will feel different making a cup of tea if you're at home on your own, feeling comfortable, to your first day of a new job, making a cup of tea for your new boss. Completely different how you do that. The environment, whether you're too hot, too cold, are you sitting, are you standing, do you have enough light to see what you're doing? And then there's additional factors related to your relationship with the activity that you're doing as well. So there's the spiritual side of things. How does the activity itself or the way you carry it out relate to your belief system? Your self-esteem and your thoughts and expectations of yourself. Reward and purpose. You know, are you making a cup of tea because you've had a really hard day, or has something really happy happened and you're making yourself a cup of tea to celebrate? The history of that activity, you know, last time you made a cup of tea, did you spill hot water all over yourself? That's going to impact how you do it the next time. There's the financial side of things, you know, there's a cost of living crisis. Are you down to your last tea bag? And then the cultural implications as well, and what that activity means to you and your social group. So once you think of all those processes happening, if we go back to our simple task of making a cup of tea, it starts to make a little bit more sense if you're feeling fatigued, it can be a lot harder to do something that other people will think is quite straightforward, because there's actually a lot of processes happening within you. One way to think about fatigue, some people may have seen this, called the boom and bust cycle. So basically, if you're having a good day, you really push yourself to try and do as much as possible because you're feeling well. And what you can do is you can ignore those warning signs that you're starting to feel a bit fatigued. And then what happens is then you have this crash and you have this period of enforced rest. And then the next, you recover from that, and then the next day you're feeling good. Again, you push yourself a little bit too much. And over time, you will actually see a reduction in the amount of activity that you do. So what we're attempting to do from fatigue management strategies is actually to have a much more consistent level of activity. So it might be on your good days that you're not doing as much as you want to do, but it will hopefully avoid you having those big crashes when you suddenly can't do anything, so that you've got a bit more consistency. A good way to get a bit of an idea about how fatigue is impacting on your life is to complete a fatigue diary over a week. So if you record what activities you're doing and how you feel, and then at the end of the week reflect back and have a look at that. See, was there any particular activities that made you feel more fatigued, less fatigued, anything that made you feel better? But you can also see how you're spacing your activities out as well. Are you trying to do everything all in one day and then you're feeling tired for the rest of the week? It can help you to try and plan your activities by trying to spread it out a little bit more consistently over the week. And try and alternate the types of activity you do as well. So you might do something a bit physically active, and then in the afternoon do something a bit more mentally active. So we do know that we live in a real world, so there's some activities that no matter how demanding are always going to be a priority. So thinking about how fatigue fluctuates, we need to want to prioritize what task we're doing. So this can be a helpful way to think about it. So what are the activities that you have to do? And it's important, though, that is things that you really have to do, but also things that you really want to do. What are your highest priorities? Is there anything that you can delay? Do you have to do everything right now? Could you do something tomorrow or next week? Delegate. Sometimes we can really struggle to ask for help or pass things over, but actually, could somebody else do something for you, or could they at least share the task with you? And then actually ditch. Sometimes we just need permission to say, actually, that's not important to us, it's not a priority, and we'd prefer to keep our energy for the things that we want to do. Another way of thinking things is about pacing, and that can be on different ways. So time, can the activity that you're doing be broken up into smaller chunks? Do something for a little bit, have a bit of a rest, go back and do a little bit more. From a distance point of view, so say you need to go to the shops, can you walk to the shops but then actually get a taxi or a bus back, so you're not doing that whole distance? And depending on how you feel, you could maybe gradually increase that distance that you're doing. Speed. The faster that we do something, the more energy that we use. So just by slowing things down, we can conserve some energy. It can be hard. We like to try and do things the way that we've always done them, but just taking that step back and slowing it down can be really helpful. Strength. So again, thinking from an OT point of view, but is there any equipment that could help you do the task? So going back to the shopping example, can you use a shopping trolley to help carry your bags back rather than carrying heavy bags yourself? Complexity can be more from a mental fatigue point of view. The more complex the task, the more mental energy that you're using. So can you simplify the task, or even just the environment that you're doing the task? So something like reducing down the background noise can just really help you focus in on what you need to do. Just a bit of a talk about rest, and I have said to use this word carefully. Some people get confused and they think if they're feeling fatigued and they just stop doing anything at all. And that's not the answer, and that can actually lead to increased fatigue and also losing muscle strength and becoming weaker over time. What we know is that a lot of people feel like they're resting, but actually the quality of their rest can be quite poor. So what we want to do is make sure that we're getting good quality rest, and that's going to be different for everybody. And it will also depend the type of fatigue that you feel as well. So if you're feeling physically fatigued, then having a rest might be that you sit down and read a book or listen to some music. Whereas if you're mentally fatigued, then reading or listening to something is going to be still going around in your head. So actually maybe taking the dog for a walk around the block is what's rest for you. It's about finding something that you enjoy doing, but just helps you to slow down and kind of switch off those voices in your head, and giving yourself that time to recharge and relax. But what we don't want is kind of stopping physical activity altogether. So we know that physical activity actually can give you energy. It can reduce stress and helps you to stay more independent. And it has also been shown to improve depression and overall mood. It should not be confused with heavy exercise, so I'm not saying everybody go out there and go do a gym session. Again, it's finding something that you enjoy. So it could be doing some gardening, it could be playing with the grandkids, taking the dog for a walk, but just finding something that's keeping your body moving. And again, you might want to start quite small, and then depending on how you feel, gradually build that up a little bit. Every presentation I do now, I have to give a plug for the fatigue webinar that we did with NKF, myself and my colleague, a few months ago, more than that. It covers most of the information that I've spoken about today, plus some additional information, and there's also the accompanying leaflet that goes with it. And we are also in the process of just finalising a leaflet about frailty as well, if anyone wants to keep an eye out for that. And then just finally, my best advice really is just to use the resources that you have around you. And I would really love to be able to tell you everything that's available in your local areas, but there's a lot of difference within London, let alone across the whole of the country. So I can't say that, but just find out what's available to you. So if you want a starting point, often your local adult social care, you can touch base and they might be able to give you a list of what's available in your area. If somebody wants to link in with OTs, we've got the Royal College of Occupational Therapy. But otherwise, there's loads of different things out there. So just do a bit of a search, talk to people, do a Google search, find out what's local to you. There's a whole range out there from discontinued gym memberships, walking groups, community groups, church or cultural groups. It's really just finding something that gives you that meaning to your life, something that you enjoy, keeps your mind active, keeps your body active. Thank you very much.